Welcome to today's episode of
Keeping Up with the
Rodgers,
Rodgers.
the hard talks.
How we fucked up.
And we're trying to fix it. This is our version of couples therapy where we talk about the hard things in our marriage to help you feel less alone. Today's topic is why being triggered was the best thing to happen to us.
So in today's episode, talking about what triggers us. I think a lot of times being triggered really opens up the opportunity for a lot of people to look back throughout their lives, see what they maybe have done wrong, and it creates a change, and it can be in a positive way if they choose to use it in that form. I mean, all throughout our entire marriage, there were plenty of times that we got triggered personally, different things that we've done, throughout the course of our life. But I know the biggest one, the reason why we even started this, there was a trigger point that happened. And what was the trigger that started this whole thing?
It's been hard being in this space for almost 12 years, doing the exact same thing every day. And when you're behind the scenes, stuck in fight or flight with all of the things that we've been dealing with, it's hard to want to make a change myself. So I continued to do the same thing over and over again. And I was sharing the same mundane try on hauls every day, sharing new items. And it just became too much. I wanted to share more about what real life is, especially with us. We've gone through a lot of things. And I think telling our story will help open up real life and take away the highlight reel that we all look forward to watching, but it's really not realistic.
But there was also in that whole time frame, there was somebody or something that must have triggered you to want to start this, or something you were watching. Because I mean, we're on Instagram, whatever our social platform is, to either find an escape, or sometimes it actually triggers us to change or make a change or see something different that we want to see. And I know that with you, something happened on there. You came to me one time, because you were triggered by something. Who was the?
I have started watching a lot of different videos that I normally watch. My consistent following of people that I look at, they share a majority of try on hauls and fashion. And going past that, I never really used social media to grow in the sense of growing what I want my life to be about. It was kind of this mundane, continuous hamster wheel circle that I did for so many years. And I was so burnt out. I am burnt out. I feel a lot of us are burnt out doing the exact same thing, sharing so much stuff every day, new home decor, new clothes, new shoes, and it's not, it gets old really quickly, especially when you're talking about the exact same thing over and over and over again. So I started watching this girl on Instagram. Her name is Jessie. I'll put her handle above. But she started making these videos about being a 30-year-old and wanting to make a career pivot. And it just sparked some sort of light in me, because I didn't realize that there were other people out there wanting change, wanting different than what they were doing. And she shares how a lot of people, even if you're making a substantial amount of money, you're not necessarily happy. And I think that's something that we've also dealt with, is we think once we hit a certain amount of money, then we'll be happy. And we haven't been. So seeing her videos definitely sparked an interest in me to start talking about the hard stuff, the real stuff, the stuff that we're all going through. So thank you to Jessie for even sparking these podcasts. But it's hard to make a change. And that's what we're doing, is we're changing, and we're talking about the hard things to hopefully make a change in wanting to share behind the scenes of our lives
and get past just the face level topics.
Yeah.
So deep diving into this topic, being triggered, I think that it often really gets a bad reputation. But what if it's just really an opportunity to make a change that we all need? I mean, I know personally, if you look at the people that are around you, I'll never forget an interview I sat in when I was young in my career and trying to find a job. Person looked at me and he said, pick the 5 people around you and what are they doing? I didn't really understand what it meant at that time, but now it hits closer to home than it ever did. Is that look at the people that you surround yourself with, and if you're not triggered to want to be better because those people that are around you, or if they don't drive you to be better, then are those the right people within your life? And that was something that me and Courtney had to deal with a lot throughout our relationship. The people that we put within our inner circle or around us, are those the right people? Are they the right fit for us? And that was a good trigger that we both had.
I think that's definitely something that changed drastically in our lives, especially over the last few years. I think one of the places that we missed the mark on, especially early on in our marriage, especially living in California, everybody's busy. Everybody has their own lives. And especially in California, nobody's playing outside. Everybody's garage doors are shut. It's not the typical suburban lifestyle where everybody's playing in the street. It wasn't that way. So you were pretty secluded, and that's hard to grow as people.
And that's actually a good point. That's actually what triggered us to really want to make a change for our family long term. I mean, at that point, we both sat down and said, with our son, we want him to be in a great school surrounded by great friends. And that was just something we put out there. And that was a trigger point for both of us.
We wanted Braden to go to any school other than living in California. Growing up, I grew up in LAUSD schools, and they were not they were not good schools, and I
I
didn't
grew up
want.
in the middle of nowhere town, so I had the exact opposite experience.
We wanted a better education for Braden with, the friends that he could grow up with for the rest of his life. And we knew that wasn't in California. So we wanted Braden to start kindergarten somewhere else. And we just happened to move to North Carolina when he was about 3.5. So he did start at an amazing school. But going back to, we didn't have the community around us other than the people that Michael worked with to create any kind of lifestyle
Or long-term relationships with people.
together at
And we
all.
didn't really know what we were searching for at that time either. We were looking for friends, and we were hoping to find friends. I think that a lot of couples do that early on in their relationship. They want to, have couples they can have fun with and spend time with, and like are relatable to them. That's hard to find. And when you're out there just searching for it, you're searching for somebody to fill that void or that gap. That can lead to maybe not the right people to always surround yourself with or put within your circle that you think might be a good fit at that time, but you really aren't. And I think we had that happen to us in a good way. And it's a good way for us to learn from it by every move that we've made. Um, coming from different house moves. I know that you were at home and in one of our places that we lived at, and just the same exact, it plays out almost every single time, is that you're at home working from home. I'm out at work all day long. And the only people that we're surrounding ourselves with are our neighbors.
So you're kind of forced to, you either make friends with the people that are around you, which are your neighbors, especially if you don't have family around you. We had no family around us, either side of our family. So it was just us and neighbors. And Michael worked, with people, but we didn't really necessarily always hang out with them. They had their own lives too. So it was pretty much just us. And then you make friends with the people that were around you, which were your neighbors. And sometimes that happened and sometimes that didn't happen.
So I know that throughout our relationship, there were quite a quite a few triggers that happened that made us both want to change personally, um, for our relationship and also for ourselves. I know one of the biggest triggers that happened that we can jump into is that whenever you wanted to make a change for yourself.
I very vividly remember when this started, but I know that just looking back, I wanted this change to start years prior. I just didn't know how. But 5 or 6 years ago, I started on my weight loss journey. I lost 40 pounds. I lost 50 at one point, but that was due to stress. So I've kept off 40 pounds. But this started about 5 or 6 years ago. And we were living in a neighborhood, and the neighbors that we had, they too wanted to lose weight. And I was intrigued by the weight loss program that they had started on. They had great success. I looked into it and it seemed great, but it was filled with a lot of foods that they had to eat. I'm allergic to. I have a wheat and soy allergy that I can't eat most of the products that were sold in this, weight loss program. So I decided to follow the program exactly just with foods that I could eat. And that started my weight loss journey. And it was completely transformational to my life, to I don't know if it was transformational to you at all, but it definitely transformed.
I think you look beautiful no matter how you look.
Thank you.
But I think more than that, there was a bigger trigger that caused you wanting to lose weight. I mean, what was that trigger?
I didn't know it before, but whenever we would take photos, this was back when photos on Instagram were taken with a DSLR camera. And this was Michael, one of Michael's jobs, one of Michael's many jobs. He would take my photos and, they would be in a traditional blog post form. I always would get mad at Michael because I didn't like how he was taking the photo, but I actually was not liking how I was looking in the photos. So that was something that was very hard to actually realize years later, because there were many, many, many fights between us that I was just mad at him because I wanted to look a certain way. And I thought if he took the photo better, that I would look better. And it wasn't that at all. It was,
And I thought I kept failing the entire time because all I was trying to do was get better and better and better at taking the photos when in all reality, it was the insecurity, I think.
I wasn't happy with how I looked. So I had Braden, years prior, but I never lost the baby weight. I had Braden and I gained over 50 pounds, and he was a 9.5 pound baby. So he wasn't a small baby. And that was, hard to deal with, especially on Instagram. Everybody's looking not like I was. I felt like I was always the larger influencer, and that was hard. So that was a big trigger in our marriage, to always want perfection when sometimes you just have to dig deep and kind of deal with those triggers on your own and realize that it's not the other person, it's probably you. When I came to Michael and asked him how he felt about sharing all of these things, and I know some of these topics we haven't dug real deep yet. We will get there, but we're kind of just opening up and giving you a little bit behind the scenes of us. But
Before it gets too juicy.
when I came to Michael and I said, how do you feel about sharing, all of the bad that has gone on? What did you think? I mean, were you
So I kind of,
Surprised?
number one, yes, I was surprised. Surprised. I didn't expect to be sitting right here and going over everything that happened within our relationship by any means. But I looked at it as an opportunity to say, what have I been doing the same over and over and over again? Do I want to change? Right? What triggered me to make want to change? And it was you always coming to me and saying, we can do this. And it's always me saying, yes, we can do this. But is it just that repetitive cycle, or are we doing something different? Putting myself out here on this platform, I've never wanted to be on video before. I've never wanted to talk about personal things. In fact, I want to be behind the scenes as far back as possible, right? But this gives me an opportunity now to be different and maybe also show you a different side of me, and show our son a different side of me about opening up. And I think that so far, even the small amount of stuff that we've done has allowed us to open up together just a little bit more, and that we're just getting started.
This is definitely some sort of healing that we didn't expect. When I brought this to him, this is definitely it's our version of couples therapy, and it's
100% true.
I think one of the downfalls in our marriage specifically is communication. I definitely grew up in a different household than Michael did. If you're hearing something in the background, that's our dog eating a bone on the floor. But growing up, I lived a different life than Michael did, especially communication wise. My parents hated each other. They probably should have never got married, and the communication style growing up was yelling, and that's what I brought into our marriage. Was any type of conflict, I wanted to sort of fight, and that's definitely not how Michael communicated at all.
I mean, for me, it was growing up, and um, um,
Resuming from that, but Michael's way of growing up is definitely different than mine, and his communication style was
was completely lacking. We pushed everything under the rug and didn't really,
we didn't push everything under the rug. He pushed everything under the rug.
again, how I was raised. So that was something that I brought into the relationship that was negative. As much as she wanted to fight, I didn't want to talk about things at all, period. And wanted to push everything under the rug and pretend like every day is a great day. Whereas there's a lot of bad stuff that happened. Communicating the good, the bad with her relationship definitely drew us really far apart. I never made her the my champion for the good days or the bad days, and that was stemming off of how I was raised and how I grew up.
I think it's kind of to me, common sense that communication would be key in a marriage, but it never has been our strong suit at all. So having no communication skills, and when I say no communication skills, I mean none. There was none. And me begging to have better communication skills probably wasn't said in the right way, which made Michael run even faster away from trying to have a conversation. But having lack thereof any communication with each other, it was really hard to communicate finances, marriage problems.
And everything that comes up along the way through our relationship. Hitting on the head again is that you said that the way that it was communicated to me, it was pushing me further away and making me not want to communicate. So I know that was tough, and it was hard to open up and go through these things, because you never want to dive deep into why we had financial troubles or why this was going on when I made everything seem so perfect.
I think that's something that is hard for you. Is Michael is the most positive person ever. He will figure out a way to do anything and everything, and coming to him with a problem kind of shut him down when he didn't know how to fix it. And that wasn't necessarily meaning fixing, a dishwasher. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about fixing a pivotal part of our marriage, and it just shut him down. He didn't know how
Yeah,
to even start.
because I see everything as black and white, and there's a problem, there's a solution, and sometimes the toughest part for me was the communication aspect, is that sometimes there just isn't a solution that happens right now, and it's got to run its course, and but you have to talk about it. And that was the tough part for me, is that there was no instant fix, there was no quick way for me to figure it out. That was hard because I didn't know how to solve a problem that a lot of times I created, and I didn't know how to get to a solution because we were never working together on the solution. So I think that another trigger point for both of us was that early on in our relationship, when we talk about finances, I dreaded Fridays. I dreaded waking up on a Friday morning and telling her, or having to tell you, that we didn't have any money because all of our money was already spent on the bills that we had, or even throughout the week, me not communicating with you that we shouldn't have spent X, Y, and Z on X, Y, and Z. And that way it wouldn't lead us to not having any money. That was a tough one to do because I made a lot of money. And, to be able to sit here and tell you while you're at home thinking, and I'm portraying that everything's perfect, that in all reality, it's not. that we don't have the money for certain things that we've already spent throughout the week, and the money that I have coming in on Friday is going to go towards our everyday livelihoods. So waking up on a Friday, I used to hate that fight because I knew it was coming. First thing in the shower, I dreaded it. I don't know how much of that you remember.
Only all of it. Like Michael said, he put on this fake persona that everything was great, and that's been a struggle. It seems like a great thing to be married to somebody that's positive all the time, but when it's masked by actually being hurt inside and lost, and
Alcohol doesn't help. Substance abuse doesn't help. Pushing things underneath the rug doesn't help.
so having, everything seem fine on the outside, it wasn't at all. And it was a constant weekly fight about, you're making everything seem as though it's fine and it's not. Why? And you just kept living that lie and kept portraying that lie. And it was a continuous cycle that was many years that didn't break until honestly not that long ago. So
And that triggered a lot of things that happened in our relationship, even about finances. And that was you look at different triggers throughout a relationship, and that was a big trigger for me, is that I never wanted to have that Friday again. I never wanted to have that Friday feeling. And I use that as a trigger, to launch myself forward and launch our relationship forward, hopefully. Something that was really personal to me on a trigger point is that, the one time we were sitting down and you had brought on a song, and it sounds as silly as it may be, but sometimes like certain things hit us at certain times. And that song, "To Be a Man," like really drove home to me in a lot of different ways. And it was more or less the fact of like, do I want to be the person that I portray myself to be, or do I actually want to be a real person that I want my son to look up to. I want to be the husband for you. And that song really did hit home, and it did trigger a lot of changes inside of me, whether it be through alcohol, through changing my life, through opening up, through communication. Those triggers along the way can help us out, and that song was a huge trigger point for me. And I know that you remember playing it for me.
I think it's hard to have these conversations because Michael is, and you're gonna make me cry. Michael is the best husband, dad, person all around, and none of these things, that we're human, and that's okay to have problems. I have a billion problems. So does Michael, but it's a matter of how we deal with them and how we move forward with them and how we, communicate better.
So throughout our relationship, Courtney, she would see, and just like I would do to her, is that we would see different things that we want different about each other, and we would try to trigger each other to make those changes. And they didn't happen overnight. I mean, a lot of these changes didn't happen until recently. I mean, there was quite a few things that did happen and did get changed through our relationship, but it didn't happen overnight.
I think it's really hard to look at somebody and say, I want XYZ to change, and then accept it, and then everything changes. And, life would be a fairy tale. That's not how it works. People aren't usually accepting of a trigger.
I mean, a lot of times it felt like you were putting me down, or I was, if I were to come to you to something, like I would feel bad because I feel like I was putting you down, and that wasn't the goal behind all of it. It was we both wanted to see better for each other, but yet the way we were communicating that, going back to communication, is that we weren't encouraging the right kind of behavior with each other, or even encouraging us to be better, just as individuals.
And going to, the point of wanting better communication, I don't know that there's exactly a formula of how to have better communication. We did XYZ and now we have perfect communication skills. That's not exactly how this goes, but trying to communicate better is a first step. And that's something that we never did. We more or less just attacked each other the whole time, and trying to communicate better is been the greatest start.
Leading into another trigger moment for me is that something that you brought up to me. You said so many times, and there was one time in particular that you said that you were on the verge of divorce, and me being so caught off guard, not even looking at it, I had no clue that we were even at that stage, and that was a huge trigger to me to want to change our relationship. I mean, I know that. Do you remember when you said that to me?
I've said it a few times, and it's very hard going back to lack of communication, coming to Michael and, continuing to outline the same problems, and Michael just portraying as though the problems weren't real. And I saw that they were real and I wanted to deal with them. And also, being as busy as you are, it's kind of hard to take time to deal with this kind of stuff. We kind of put this stuff on the back burner. And I feel like most of us do that. We put our kids first, we put our work first, we put those things first. And marriage gets put last. And that's definitely what we've done. And it's hard to want to make a change, I feel like, from your side when you're just stuck in the chaos and the busyness. So coming to Michael and requesting change time after time after time.
I just said it felt like a request.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like we were working together towards something. I felt like you always wanted a different person that I could never be in the relationship, and I always felt like I was failing you for that. And that was, a trigger point to me, is that, do I want to keep on this repetitive victim cycle of me feeling like I'm, there's like poor pitiful me. I didn't want to pull that card at all. Like, I wanted to change. Like, what could I do different to make myself better and become a better husband to you? And hearing the stuff that you'd say to me, using that kind of as fuel, I guess, to make that change was a big impact on me. So I just looked at maybe the way that you came to me with stuff as more of, you're trying to help me become better. And then I started using that as fuel to try to become better. And I'm not the best by any means at using everything or even portraying that I've used anything that I'm saying like right now. And
Everything's still a work in progress.
it is 110%. And there's a lot of triggers that still come up along the way that, I try to work towards. But using, our communication and trying to get a little bit better at it nowadays, I think does help us out.
I agree. I think the hard parts about these conversations is, sharing the hard, real struggles that we deal with. And one of the struggles that I dealt with personally was Michael drinking. And it was lonely and hard and didn't make sense to me because I had never been around people who had a drinking problem. And I didn't grow up with parents that drank. And it was definitely a shock to me to be around somebody that had, an issue with alcohol. And that's
It was, and my biggest issue was, and we'll talk about it, in the future, is that I couldn't just have one. And when I get home, I would bury my emotions within beer or alcohol. I mean, the thing that always sticks out to me is that, our son knew what my favorite beer was for the longest time. And that was a huge impact. But on the flip side of that, too, is that whenever you would say, alcoholism, like, I'm working as much as I am, you'd always say that I was never a mean alcoholic, or I never did X, Y, and Z, and we are trying to justify my alcoholism.
To me, again, I've never been around an alcoholic. The only alcoholic tendencies that I would know of is if I were to watch a movie. And when you see somebody that's in a movie, they're probably raging, and mad and angry and some low life person. And that's not to title every alcoholic that way. That's what was that I didn't know. And that's what I thought, that if you had an alcohol problem, you also had other issues. And that just was not the case. So it was it was almost I gave you permission because he wasn't doing anything wrong. He wasn't being mean. He was still going to work. He was still providing for our family. And this one crutch that he wanted, it took over. And it took over our marriage. It took over everything.
It was the best way for me to push everything under the rug that we've already talked about in the communication. So it was a way for me to get home and check out. And that led to us not communicating. So you coming to me and, telling me about drinking as much as I drank or how much ever I drank, and that, it triggered you. I was doing that to you.
Yeah, it was. What's hard is that you don't know what it's like until you're in it, and being in it since the beginning, it's been
since the beginning,
since the beginning, it's been very, very hard. And it's not something that I feel like anybody really talks about. I feel like I see people that share these transformations of, I've not drank in 3 years, but you don't see the beginning. And Michael's at the beginning. Michael started his non-drinking journey Labor Day, the day that he and Braden flipped the go-kart. So that was a good day. On the way to urgent care, I was drinking a drink because it was just a stressful time in the car while Michael was driving. And right before we got there, I'm like, hey, do you want to finish this? And that was his last drink. And it's been probably hard. That's a whole nother.
We'll unpack it later on.
I've made this point several times, but I think the premise of all of these videos is just to share that we're real people and we all go through hard things, and we want to open up and share and not be shamed for talking about this kind of stuff. So that's what these videos are about, and we're going to continue them. And it's already, I feel like, transformational for us talking about these things. They're definitely things that we've shied away from. We've never personally had professional counseling, and that's mainly because it costs money, and that wasn't somewhere that we valued at the time. But
that's a whole different topic.
Another topic that we can go into. But these conversations are hard, and it's been
transforming. I mean, honestly, we used to present each other with so many problems and never come up with a solution. And I think that, or I know that all the stuff that's happened, has triggered us to want to bring up the problem, but now work together on a solution.
and find a solution. Yeah, that's our main goal here, is to find a solution. And this isn't marriage advice of how we did it and it'll work for you guys too.
Definitely don't do it our way.
No, please don't. But it's sharing the topics that nobody wants to talk about, because we all honestly do want to hear about it. We're just going for it and sharing our experience.
For me, it was the triggers that came up, or how you triggered me throughout the relationship. It always felt like I was failing, or I was doing something wrong, or maybe I wasn't doing something good enough. But in all reality, it was an opportunity for me to grow, and I felt that I thought I was broken. And it doesn't mean that I am broken. I'm trying to grow, and we're trying to grow as a couple. I didn't look at it that way for the longest time.
I think every time I came to Michael with a, doesn't matter what it was, a fight, a suggestion, a plea, it was probably a fight, a plea for change, he took it as, that he was failing and he was doing something else wrong. And I just wanted to move forward in a different way. I didn't want to continue the same cycle that we were continuing. And I think that was definitely hard for you to realize that I was on your team. I just wanted it to go a different path for us, and you took it as something negative.
Yeah, I mean, I did 100%. The way it was given to me, I wasn't, not that I wasn't open to accept it. It was that I didn't hear it the way you were trying to say it to me. And that's where our communication from the very beginning was lacking, is that in the initial phase, or when we first, started dating, we didn't talk about, the bad stuff or anything that, went on. And that's where our communication skills really lacked. And then they were never developed. So we didn't know how to properly communicate how we wanted to see us get better as individuals and as a couple. And that's something that we are working towards now.
And took us a long time to realize. The goal of this specific video isn't to share how to stop being triggered. It's how to stop being triggered and letting it control our life and our marriage, and learning how to communicate and work together to not let those triggers have such a high impact in our life.
And define our relationship.
Yeah. I think we're going to cut here and wrap up today's episode. I know that I could keep talking on this subject for far too long, but we do want to keep it concise. So thank you so much for watching. We will be sharing another episode next week. I don't know what we're talking about yet. I don't think Michael does either.
I'm sure I'll be triggered between now and then.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for watching.
We look forward to seeing y'all on next week's episode. And if you like this, and as we're learning and growing, we'd love to hear feedback from you all on, if there's anything that triggered y'all in y'all's relationship or day to day, and
what advice you have at all. We are welcome and all ears to anything that you have to help the success of any of our marriages. Leave it in the comments below for all of us to read. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of
Keeping Up with the Rodgers.
We'll see you next week.